Let's chat now to Martin Davies then from Deloitte, who joins us now as we perhaps get to a few more solutions maybe. Martin, it's so difficult. I mean, the plight of South Africans has been one that we've detailed probably since post-apartheid, really. Yet, it feels like very little has changed. You've just heard the insert before you. Are there any solutions?
Arabella, yeah, always good to chat to you. I was listening to that and just shaking my head. It's terrible to hear. It really is. And I was looking at some stats, came out a few days ago, looking at sort of the significant increase in who are categorized as very poor people in our country. We always talked about middle class being under pressure, but the real pressure and the real pain and suffering, as we were very obvious in your previous interview call, was amongst the very poor in our country. And I'm afraid it's about a squeezing out of opportunity for people who are very marginalized. And where to from here? That's the biggest question, I'm afraid.
Yeah, the hard stance here is that, these are things we should have probably put in place a very long time ago. We knew what the problems were. We should have implemented it a whole long time ago. We clearly didn't have the political will then. Do you think we do now finally have some sort of political will to implement some of the reforms we need to pick this country up again?
Arabella, you say we. Well, we as South Africans, we care, but I'm afraid there's not too much we can do if the state is inactive. The government is elected, the government is funded, and the government is expected to deliver basic, acceptable levels of public goods and services to its citizenry. In addition to that, it should, beyond delivery of public goods and services, think education, think healthcare, think basic infrastructure, think safety and security. The state needs to provide opportunity. And when you have what I'm told in recent months of calculations of 42% real unemployment, that's an opportunity. That's just simply, and I often say, it's socially, it's economically, it's politically, it's morally unacceptable. A 42% unemployment rate is morally unacceptable. And no one can say that's okay. It talks to, as you say, Arabella, this has been a long, slow structural decline and grind of deindustrialization. That interview, I think, was in the Western Cape, and we see sort of the significant erosion and of high employment generative industries, think clothing and textiles, amongst many others, in the Western Cape. Factories that have closed, areas that were previously industrialized are now mere shells of their former selves. So I'm afraid that talks to policy failure, implementation failure. And I'm afraid there needs to be accountability for that, something that's been lacking for quite a long time in our society.
Yeah. Perhaps your biggest expectations then as we get towards that speech then around, 39 minutes now?
Yeah, look, it's we in recent years I've detected we are more and more anxious every time we hear a budget speech delivered by our finance minister, or in this case, a midterm budget speech update, and it just talks to the growing sense of concern. I think sometimes more concern, desperation in many cases. The responsibility for structural reform certainly does not reside with the Treasury. The Treasury's responsibility is to pragmatically allocate capital to where the developmental bang for the buck is the greatest. This is a case of having to protect and service the poorest in our society, first and foremost priority. Look after the poor in your country and provide them opportunity. Secondly, I believe we're really talking about roughly a 25-30% reduction in tax revenues. Secondly, it's about cutting the wasteful expenditure by the state. And I think if we can start to do that, the country will certainly be on a far better footing going forward. The challenge is where is that wasteful expenditure going? Well, it's going to a bloated and increasingly dysfunctional state sector. If we were getting 5, 6, 7% GDP growth and very effective delivery of public goods and services, we wouldn't mind to have a high-cost state. But I'm afraid we're not getting that. Yeah. So I think there needs to be a sharing of the pain amongst the public sector. And the perennial problem is that of state enterprises. State enterprises need to make money, need to be efficient, need to be enablers of the economy, not seeking sort of a quick fix and constant drain anchors to the fiscus, with good money previously going after bad. So I'm afraid our finance minister has to draw a line finally and say enough is enough. We cannot keep on spending money in this way, where money is desperately needed, as we well know, in far more needy areas of society, be it very, very poor people, or even industries that have taken a significant hit.
Yep.
Think tourism and leisure, a sector that has been decimated by COVID-19 and subsequent shutdowns, and one which accounts for roughly 7-8% of GDP.
Sure.
Of our country, and is very high employment generative. What sort of relief perhaps will be giving to certain sectors that have been dramatically hit in over the course of this last few months in our country?
Yeah, definitely doesn't get any easier from here on in. We're going to have to make the hard decisions, and the suffering could be very, very long-standing. Dr. Martin Davies from Deloitte, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.